Hello there. Today's story is The Boy Who Wanted to Cook by Gloria Whelan. So here's a map of France where this story is from. Up here, the north is Paris, the Eiffel Tower, and our story takes place down here in the south of France. In the south of France, near the River Tarn, is the little restaurant La Bonne Vache. The Good Cow takes its name from its famous boeuf à la mode, a delicious beef stew. In the kitchen of the restaurant is 10-year-old Pierre. Pierre's father, Monsieur Valcourt, who is both chef and patron of the restaurant, says, "Pierre, go and play with your friends." "Go fishing," says Pierre's mother. Madame Valcourt bakes the pastries for the restaurant. But Pierre wants to cook. He longs to be a great chef like his father and his grandfather before him. Pierre's father tells him, "Pierre, you are too young to cook." As Pierre rides his bicycle under the chestnut trees, he imagines a chestnut souffle. When he passes a wood, he thinks of the little morille, the tasty mushrooms that grow there. A pair of goats look to him like a very large goat cheese. On the green leaves of the vineyard, he pictures the delicious escargot, the snails, nibbling away. To Pierre, all the world is one big, beautiful meal. A car stops, and the driver calls to Pierre, "I'm a stranger to these parts. Can you tell me, young man, where I can find La Bonne Vache?" Pierre leans into the car to give directions to his family's restaurant. On the seat, next to the man, he glimpses a paper that says inspection form. On the form is the name of the famous company that awards stars to restaurants. If the restaurant is very, very, very good, it receives a star, and people from all over go there to eat. Inspectors test the restaurant by having a meal there. But there is a strict rule that the identity of the inspector must never be revealed. Pierre gives directions to the inspector, who thanks him and drives away. Pierre pedals as fast as he can. Should he tell his mother and father who the inspector is? No. He could tell about the stranger coming to the restaurant, but it would not be honorable to tell who he is. Out of breath, he bursts into the kitchen. "Maman, Papa, a stranger is coming a long distance to eat at our restaurant." Monsieur Valcourt consults the reservations. "Oui, there is a name I don't recognize." He slaps his forehead and declares, "With so little notice, how are we to produce a meal worthy of someone who has come a long distance to eat at La Bonne Vache? Impossible! I don't have any wild strawberries to make my famous gâteau aux fraises. Impossible!" says Pierre's mother. Pierre recalls from his history class that what the great General Napoleon said. He tells his parents, "Impossible n'est pas français." Impossible is not French. The mother The father and Pierre stand at attention. Together they repeat, Impossible n'est pas français. Pierre, his father says, you must go into the village for us. Pierre races on his bicycle to the village. When Pierre tells Madame Farcy the crémière of the special occasion, she chooses a cheese so soft, so silken, and with such a subtle aroma, she weeps to part with it. At the butcher shop, Monsieur Camus selects, as he always does, a perfect cut of meat for the boeuf à la mode. Monsieur Moreau picks out tiny onions like pearls, potatoes no larger than marbles, lettuces as tender as rose petals, and hands Pierre a basket of plump snails. But alas, he has no strawberries for Pierre's mother. Madame Valcourt is close to tears. My gâteau will be nothing without strawberries. Pierre knows a place in the woods and hurries off with his basket. Beneath the ferns is a patch of wild strawberries. Pierre gets on his knees and carefully plucks the tiny berries. What will we have for the fish course? His father asks. The cod that I plan to serve tonight comes from the ocean, miles away. I must have something from our own countryside for the guest. I'll get a trout for you, Papa. Pierre catches a jar full of grasshoppers, takes up his fishing pole, and hurries to the river. He knows all the places where the trout hide. Under the shade of the branches that hang over the stream, in the deep holes where the water is cool, in the little riffles that catch the tasty insects. A quarter hour goes by, a half hour, 3/4 of an hour. At last, Pierre feels a tug on his line. A fine trout. On his way across the woods from the river, a miracle occurs. Pierre sees the first morille of the season. The rare mushrooms have a delicate perfume and give a magic to any dish. Carefully, Pierre gathers the mushrooms. Look, Papa, what I have found for the boeuf à la mode. Oh, very nice, Pierre, but not traditional, his papa says. We must prepare our boeuf à la mode just as I have always prepared it, and as your grandfather prepared it. The regular guests are seated at their tables. Madame Brisac is there with her little dog Miette. Monsieur Delage is having his customary pudding au chocolat. Madame Jupien and Monsieur Jupien, as they always do, are tasting each other's dinners. In the kitchen, the trout is shimmering in its coat of gelée. The lettuces are delicately dressed. The beef à la mode is simmering with its little potatoes and onions. The cheese is relaxing, and Pierre's mother is decorating the gâteau with the strawberries. But Papa is unhappy. I am the chef, but I am also the patron. At a great restaurant, the patron is there to greet the guest. But I dare not leave the boeuf à la mode even for a moment, and your mother is très occupée. Pierre says, Papa, I can watch the beef à la mode. His father is about to say, impossible. Instead, he snatches off his toque and hurries away to don the striped trousers and dinner jacket of a patron. Pierre stands on a chair and stirs, adjusting the fire so that there are only little bubbles and no big ones. On the kitchen table are the Moria with their delicate perfume. While his mother's back is turned, Pierre snatches the Morias and drops them into the boeuf à la mode. Moments later, his father appears. He mops the perspiration from his face and replaces his toque. The guest is here, he says, and snatching up the plate with the trout, places it in the hands of the waiter, Albert. When Albert comes back, the plate is empty. But when the salad plate returns, there is a tiny leaf, no larger than a mouse's ear. Alas, the leaf is a bit wilted and has been rejected by the guest. A tragedy, cries Pierre's mother. As Pierre's father ladles out the boeuf à la mode, he sees the morille. His face turns red and then white. Quelle horreur, he shouts. Pierre runs out the kitchen door. When Pierre has the courage to creep back, his father forgives him for the guest's plate, with the boeuf à la mode has come back scraped clean, Moria and all. The guest has finished the gâteau, Papa says, and is now having his café. As the guest leaves La Bonne Vache, he summons Monsieur Valcourt and announces to the astonished patron, I am not merely a guest, sir. I am an inspector from the company with the stars. He thanks Monsieur Valcourt for the meal and departs. Pierre's mother falls into a swoon. His father falls onto a chair. Pierre, Monsieur Valcourt asks, did you know our guest was an inspector? Yes, Papa. Though we may never receive a star, Pierre, you were right to keep the secret. I would rather have a son who has honneur than a star for La Bonne Vache. Two weeks go by with no word from the company with the stars. The wheat has ripened in the field, the raspberries have been picked, the plums have turned purple in the orchards and are ready to turn into a tart. At La Bonne Vache, dinners are served, but faces are long. One morning, Pierre looks out to see the postman approaching, and behind him, the entire village, led by Madame Farcy, the cremière, Monsieur Moreau, the greengrocer, and Monsieur Camus, the butcher. The postman hands Pierre's father a letter, and on the envelope is the return address of the famous company with the stars. Everyone crowds around. They assure Pierre's family that it does not matter about the star. While they all know there is no better restaurant than La Bonne Vache, one can't expect a small village to compete with the great restaurants of Paris, though in truth, it would be a great honneur for the village. The hands of Pierre's father tremble as he opens the envelope and takes out the letter. We have awarded you a star, the letter says. When the letter speaks of the delicacy of the gâteau, Pierre's mother blushes with pleasure. But the most complimentary words are saved for the boeuf à la mode. The inspector writes, I was especially pleased to see the innovation of the Moria. Their delicate perfume added greatly to the traditional boeuf à la mode. Pierre, Papa says, Now you may cook.